Welcome to Pramati Hillview Academy digital class. Dear students, today I'm going to take up the second session of the chapter The Lost Child. Let's begin. Dear students, before we go to the second session, let's recall what we studied in the first session. The child goes to the fair. It was the spring fair. All the people are going to it. Some walk, some ride on horses, some in bullock carts. The child runs with his parents. He is overjoyed. When he remains behind, his father and mother would ask him to come and join them. He remains behind to see the toys in the shops. The little boy wants the toy, but his parents would not be able to get it for him. So they ask him to look at other things. Other things attract the child. It is the season of mustard flowering. The fields, they look gold with them. The dragonflies flutter over the mustard flowers. The child tries to catch one of them, but he would be called by his mother. He runs towards his parents. Suddenly he hears the dove cooing. He picks up the petals in the grove then and starts running around the banyan tree. The life has become really happy to this child, and he comes to the entrance of the fair. As I said, the real story starts now. Let's know what it is. As they neared the village, the child could see many other footpaths full of throngs, which means full crowd. Converging means gathering to the whirlpool of the fair, and felt at once repelled and fascinated by the confusion of the world he was entering. As they were about to reach the fair, the child saw huge crowds of people walking from all directions towards the fair. The dense crowd scared him, and he stepped back for a while. But the next moment, he got attracted to the mind-boggling crowd of humanity. A sweetmeat seller hawked gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi at the corner of his entrance, and a crowd pressed round his counter at the foot of an architecture of many colored sweets decorated with leaves of silver and gold. The child stared open-eyed, and his mouth watered for the barfi. That was his favorite sweet. I want that barfi, he slowly murmured, but he half knew as he begged that his plea would not be heeded. Heeded means paid attention, because his parents would say he was greedy. So without waiting for an answer, he moved on. At the entrance of the fair, to one corner, a sweetmeat seller had set up a shop. He was selling various sweets like gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, and jalebi. The sweets were displayed at different heights and were covered with foils of gold and silver. The boy's mouth watered when he sighted his favorite barfi. He expressed his desire to get one in a low voice, because he knew that his request would be refused by his parents. They would say that you have become greedy for the buffet. As he did not expect that his demand would be fulfilled, sadly he walked further. A flower seller hawked, "A garland of Gulmohar, a garland of Gulmohar." The child seemed irresistibly drawn. He went towards the basket where the flowers lay heaped and half murmured, "I want that garland." But he well knew his parents would refuse to buy him those flowers because they would say that they were cheap. So, without waiting for an answer, he moved on. The next stall was that of a flower seller. He announced that he was selling garlands of Gulmohar flowers. The child wanted one of those. He walked towards the basket of flowers and again announced his desire to have one in a low voice because he knew that his demand would not be fulfilled. He knew that his parents would refuse to buy him the flowers as they would say they were cheap. Again, the boy walked ahead without expecting a reply from his parents. A man stood holding a pole with yellow, red, green, and purple balloons flying from it. The child was simply carried away by the rainbow glory of their silken colors, and he was filled with an overwhelming desire. Overwhelming means a strong emotion. Desire to possess them all. But he well knew his parents would never buy him the balloons because they would say he was too old to play with such toys. So he walked on further. The next thing that the child came across was a balloon seller selling balloons of different colors of the rainbow. The boy was attracted to the shiny colors of the balloons and wanted to have them all. But he knew that his parents would not buy the balloons for him, as they would reason that he was too old to play with them. So the child silently moved on. A snake charmer stood playing a flute to a snake which coiled itself in a basket, its head raised in a graceful bend like the neck of a swan, while the music stole into its invisible ears like the gentle rippling of an invisible waterfall. The child went towards the snake charmer, but knowing his parents had forbidden, means not allowed, him to hear such coarse music, means unpleasant music, as the snake charmer played, he proceeded further. Then he paused at a snake charmer who was playing a flute, and the snake was twisting its neck to the music. The snake had coiled itself in a basket and had raised its head out. It bent and moved its neck gracefully like a swan. It seemed that the music of the flute was heard by the snake's invisible ears and created the effect of a waterfall on it, because it swayed its neck in a similar way. The boy walked towards the snake charmer, but as his parents had warned him to remain away from the unpleasant music played by such snake charmers, he moved on. There was a roundabout in full swing. Men, women, and children carried away in whirling motion shrieked and cried with dizzy laughter. The child watched them intently, and then he made a bold request. I want to go on the roundabout, please, father, mother. Then he saw the roundabout swing. It was full of men, women, and children who were enjoying the ride. The boy watched the people on the roundabout and then, with a lot of courage, expressed his desire to go on the roundabout. There was no reply. He turned to look at his parents. They were not there ahead of him. He turned to look on either side. They were not there. He looked behind. There was no sign of them. When parents did not reply, he turned towards them. He saw that they were nowhere around. He looked around and behind, but his parents were nowhere to be seen. A full, deep cry rose within his dry throat, and with a sudden jerk of his body, he ran from where he stood, crying in real fear, "Mother! Father!" Tears rolled down from his eyes, hot and fierce. His flushed face was convulsed with fear. Panic stricken, he ran to one side first, then to the other, hither and thither. Hither and thither means here and there, in all directions, knowing not where to go. "Mother, father," he wailed. His yellow turban came untied, and his clothes became muddy. The boy cried loudly, jerked his body, and ran here and there, calling out for his parents. He was full of fear, and tears started rolling down his cheeks. As he wailed and ran around, his turban opened, and his clothes became muddy. Having run to and fro in a range of running for a while, he stood defeated, his cries suppressed into sobs. At little distances on the green grass, he could see, through his filmy eyes, men and women talking. He tried to look intently means carefully, among the patches of bright yellow clothes, but there was no sign of his father and mother among these people, who seemed to laugh and talk just for the sake of laughing and talking. After some time, he gave up. The loud cries turned into mild sobs. He saw some people standing and talking and tried to find if his parents were among them. The laughter and talks of the people were meaningless for the child. He was simply searching for his parents. He ran quickly again, this time to shrine to which people seemed to be crowding. Every little inch of space here was congested with men. Congested means full. But he ran through people's legs, his little sob lingering. "Mother, father," near the entrance to the temple. However, the crowd became very thick. Men jostled each other, heavy men with flashing, murderous eyes and hefty shoulders. The poor child struggled to thrust a way between their feet, but knocked to and fro by their brutal movements. He might have been trampled underfoot, trampled, crushed underfoot, had he not shrieked at the highest pitch of his voice, "Father, mother." A man in the surging crowd heard his cry and, stooping with great difficulty, lifted him up in his arms. The boy ran towards the temple, which was crowded with people. He ran through the legs of men, calling out for his parents. The crowd was pushing each other as he neared the entrance of the temple. The boy got scared of huge, strong men who stared people with their murderous eyes and pushed them with their strong and big shoulders. The boy could have been crushed under the feet of the men had his cries not been heard by a man in the crowd. He lifted the child. How did you get here, child? Whose baby are you? The man asked as he steered clear of the mass. The child wept more bitterly than ever now, and only cried, I want my mother, I want my father. The man tried to soothe him. Soothe? Relax, by taking him to the roundabout. Will you have a ride on the horse? He gently asked as he approached the ring. The child's throat tore into 1,000 shrill sobs, and he only shouted, I want my mother, I want my father. The man tried to relax the child by taking him to the roundabout swing. He offered him a ride, but the child screamed and wept loudly that he wanted his parents. The man headed towards the place where the snake charmer still played on the flute to the swaying cobra. Listen to that nice music, child, he pleaded. Pleaded means requested. But the child shut his ears with his fingers and shouted his double pitched strain. Double pitched strain means usage of a lot of force. I want my mother, I want my father. The man took him near the balloons, thinking the bright colors of the balloons would distract the child's attention and quieten him. Would you like a rainbow colored balloon? He persuasively asked. The child turned his eyes from the flying balloons and just sobbed, I want my mother, I want my father. The man started walking back on the same route which the child had taken. So he took the child to the snake charmer. He asked him to listen to the nice music being played by the snake charmer. The child shut his ears with his fingers and screamed loudly that he wanted his parents. The man took the child to the bright colored balloons, hoping that he might get cheered by seeing them. He offered a balloon to the child, but the child turned away and wept for father and mother. The man, still trying to make the child happy, bore him to the gate where the flower seller sat. Bore means carried. Look, can you smell those nice flowers, child? Would you like a garland to put round your neck? The child turned his nose away from the basket and reiterated his sob. Reiterated means repeated. I want my mother. I want my father. The man tried to make the child happy and took him to the flower seller. He asked him to smell the fragrance of the flowers and offered him a garland. The child turned his nose away from the basket and reiterated his sob. I want my mother. I want my father. Thinking to humor is disconsolate. Disconsolate means very unhappy and unable to be comforted. Charged by a gift of sweets, the man took him to the counter of the sweet shop. What sweets would you like, child? He asked. The child turned his face from the sweet shop and only sobbed. I want my mother. I want my father. Finally, the man took him to the sweetmeat seller and offered to buy sweets for him. Still, the child did not want his favorite sweet but wanted his parents. Dear students, we have come to an end of the chapter. I hope you all have enjoyed and understood the chapter, The Lost Child. As I said, The Lost Child is the story of a small child who gets lost in a fair. He had gone with his parents to the fair, but loses them when he gets engrossed in looking at a roundabout swing. The story highlights the bond of love and affection that the child shares with his parents. Before losing them, he had been demanding different things like sweets, balloons, flowers, swings, etc. Once he loses them, he is picked up by a stranger. The stranger tries to quieten the child by offering him all these things that he had demanded from his parents. But the child doesn't want them anymore. He wants his parents first. That clearly shows nothing is equal to parents and their love. I'm going to come up with a new chapter. Until then, bye children. Take care.